Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by PC to PC, the online computer migration service from PC First, moving files, applications, and preferences from your old computer to your new one. Additional support is provided by Upside Events, presenting the Digital Lifestyle Revolution Conference, where people and technology intersect. Hi, and welcome to this special edition of the Computer Chronicles. We are in Prague in the Czech Republic, covering ETRE, the European Technology Roundtable Exhibition. It's an annual gathering of high-tech industry CEOs from around the world, all coming here to try and figure out the future in the very fast-paced world of high-tech and the internet.
People are working not for tomorrow's morning.
One thing was clear here at this conference. The high-tech industry has changed quite a bit since last year. Attendees were talking in the past tense about the PC era. The excitement was all about cell phones, PDAs, set-top boxes, and information appliances. And the internet was now being seen as mere plumbing, not as a business in itself.
Just as when Thomas Edison came out, electricity was a business, and the buzz was around electricity. But although there is still an electric power industry, in fact, if you think of all the economic activities based on the fact that we have electricity, this conversation and people's ability to see it, we're not in the electricity business here, but without electricity, we couldn't be doing it. Similarly, there will be very few companies that will be in the internet business. Yes, there will be infrastructure companies like ours and Akamai and Inktomi and people like that, but in fact, there will not be internet-only businesses. There will be companies that use the internet or whose business is enabled by the internet, but we won't think of them as internet companies.
There was also a clear desire on the part of the e-companies here at ETRE to move beyond hype and into reality, profitable reality. IBM was one of those companies.
The past 18 months have been about hype and how many press releases you put out to make big announcements like Oracle made when they said they were with Ford and Chrysler and whatever was there. We know what happened since then, nothing, absolutely nothing. On our side, we didn't put out a lot of press releases. We don't have the kind of customers that like to put out press releases about what they are doing. We have alliance with our customer. We have helped, as I said, more than 20,000 customers become real e-business and successful e-business.
In the e-commerce space, everyone seemed resigned to the idea that e-business alone is not enough anymore. And with the holiday buying season upon us, the view here was that the real power in the e-world will come from the combined strength of bricks and mortar and the web.
We think it's going to be a good Christmas for electronic commerce in general, but I'd much rather be a retail or a business-to-business commerce company selling in the real world and in cyberspace at the same time, because I think that's really the model for the future.
The need to bridge the physical world with the virtual world was certainly the key message among those working in internet media, who have discovered that electrons are not necessarily cheaper than atoms.
One of the big surprises that we've had is how expensive it is. Those of us who used to print on paper, when the web came along, we thought, oh, good, no more trucks to drive around the country, no more trees to chop down and flatten out and spread with ink. I mean, it's going to be so much cheaper. It's turned out web publishing is quite expensive because it's 24/7. When you're on the web, there's always someone looking at your site and expecting it to update. It can be much more complex than a paper catalog or a paper book. And finally, the people that it takes to put the website together are actually more expensive because their talents are newer than the people it takes to, say, publish a catalog. So web publishing, while we thought it was going to be this big cost saver, has actually turned out to be very expensive.
And as in e-commerce, one of the lessons internet media companies have learned is that new media needs old media to survive.
One of the great lessons, in our opinion, as a result of the internet bubble phenomenon is that we've learned that in the media space, it's very difficult to build a business using only the internet as your communications platform. So we've always felt that it was very important to build several platforms and then create an editorial team that was agile and was able to create content that could be delivered across multiple platforms.
While the dot-coms are embracing partnerships with old economy companies, some of the older traditional software companies, like Autodesk, are just migrating from the physical world into the virtual world.
We don't care whether our customers are designing the real world, the physical world, or the digital world. In fact, there's a lot of similarities. In fact, when you think about it, an architect designing a major building, it has to be visualized for the customer. Many times the customer wants an animation flying through the building, so there's a lot of complementary technology. So moving into pure multimedia and games design, interactive games with the web. Imagine the future where, you know, as I frankly we're already seeing, you know, the games are actually something that the user can create on the fly. So it's actually a very natural extension.
Indeed, Autodesk, a company which was criticized once for not moving quickly enough into the cyber world, is almost more well-known now for its design in the virtual world of media than in the physical world of construction.
Our software already is used for most, I think 4 of the networks will be using our software on election eve. So as you see all the results flying up, so sort of this real-time, many, you know, Super Bowl last year, many of the broadcasts already use our software for that, and interactive TV is just the next step. Again, people want a rich experience, more data than flat alphanumeric, and to be able to have good 3D objects on the web, to have them be, you know, very malleable, usable, makes a lot of sense.
If you marvel at the special effects in the movies these days, you are probably being impressed by software from Autodesk.
The last 3 years, all of the nominations for special effects have used Autodesk software. So we feel we've been a winner through them. But 2 years ago, we actually received an Academy Award ourselves for the contribution that our discrete products have made to the industry. So we have our own Academy Award. We're very proud of it.
But these redefined high-tech companies are doing more than just fun stuff. In fact, the consensus among the attendees here was that the efficiency of the internet may be the most important driver in the economic boom of the last few years.
Everyone agrees now that productivity is being significantly improved by the internet. And that is having a macroeconomic impact that is hugely beneficial. And I think there are people here that even see, in the event of wars and high oil prices and stupid governments, that the productivity gains are getting better and better, and they're so good that they could outweigh all of those other factors and keep our economies growing in spite of all that bad stuff.
Another change that was obvious here at ETRE was the new generation of dot-com executives. 20-somethings were being replaced by gray hairs, and founders were being replaced by seasoned managers.
I have been in the interactive services business now for almost 15 years, and I have seen so many technology and interactive services companies stumble, falter, and sometimes fail because the founders or the entrepreneurs that grew it didn't see when they needed to add strength to the management team. And sometimes they needed to be told in very direct fashion by their boards of directors or their shareholders, it's time for you to move to a new role and to bring in bench strength.
VerticalNet is typical of many dot-com startups which have hired proven executive talent to take on the new challenge of turning revenue into profits. And the company's former CEO says that's fine with him.
I said, now wait a minute, I'd be insane. If this person wants to join VerticalNet, I'd be insane to turn down the opportunity to bring in a seasoned, talented person, an executive, deny that person the title they want, president, CEO, and not step up to chairman role, and to help him be successful because that's what shareholders want. And I'm a shareholder.
The people of Prague know a lot about topics like security and privacy in the physical world. Many of them had to deal with a Russian invasion here about 30 years ago. But the hot topic at ETRE is security and privacy in the virtual world of today's internet.
Security has been, an issue, the number one issue for companies connecting to the internet since the beginning of the internet. In the last year, obviously, we've seen a lot of denial of service attacks and a lot of security breaches, which have gotten the issue to get a lot of public awareness. But again, the interesting thing about our industry, when I started Checkpoint 93, security was number one issue for companies connected to the internet. It evolved a lot and it remained number one issue.
Symantec is one company that is refocusing its efforts from just fighting software viruses to the bigger challenge of overall internet security.
If we were trying to create a high-growth software and services business, we needed to be focused, and hence the decision to focus on internet security and the infrastructure side of that. So we do not just antivirus, as people have always known Symantec for, but we do URL filtering, we do email scanning, we do client-side firewalls, we will do a gateway-based firewall with the acquisition of Accent. We do operational security, which is vulnerability assessment and intrusion detection, and we also have technologies in the AAA space, which is access control, authentication, and authorization. So we'll be a pretty broad software company focused on an opportunity that is exploding.
One innovative approach to security is this electronic fingerprint reader called URU Pro. Just touch the sensor, and if you are you get access. In fact, there are several new approaches to security on the net, largely aimed at the consumer's fear of using their credit cards on e-commerce sites.
Most of the purchases, the individual purchases that you would make on the internet are using a credit card or a debit card. And so we're working with those companies to provide a stronger security mechanism, because that's where you have to solve the problem. The fact that you're buying a book from Amazon.com, you don't necessarily need to authenticate and provide security for every person buying a $20 book. But they're all using some sort of credit card. So it's the credit card fraud that has to be eliminated. And today, if we look at published statistics from Visa and some of the credit card companies, the credit card fraud on the internet is much, much higher than it is in brick and mortar.
What Arcot does that is unique is create a security system that seduces hackers into incorrectly thinking they have succeeded.
We're able to create an unbreakable container in software. And that's sort of an unusual circumstance, because software is fundamentally stealable. You can't prevent somebody from stealing a file or a module. But what we do with our software file is we camouflage the contents inside of it so that any attempt to break it by hackers, either offline or online, will not work. It will appear to open and give you some information, but it'll be the incorrect information. So it's the analogy that if you want to put a strong lock on the front door of your house with a big key that's too big to fit in your pocket, you'll have to hide the key somewhere. And the typical place would be to hide it under the doormat, meaning the bad guy always knows where to look to find it. He lifts the doormat, he finds the key, and he opens the lock. In the Arcot case, the doormat being our software file, if the bad guy opens it up or lifts up the doormat, he will see millions of keys under there, all looking identical. And he has to choose one, and if it isn't the right one, he'll get caught.
The goal with internet security solutions is to make consumers feel as comfortable online as they do in the shopping mall.
We want to have the brick and mortar experience mirrored on the internet. That's what all of us really need, where we walk into a store, we buy something, we give them our credit card, we sign the credit slip receipt. They authorize the credit card by swiping it through a machine. And all of that happens sort of normally, and we're assured that, it's a legal transaction, a legitimate transaction. We walk out. We don't have to do anything special. The internet needs to be the same way.
Indeed, the physical world of bricks and mortar is a good model, not only for understanding security solutions, but for understanding the basic security problem.
I think what the web has facilitated is the opportunity for the graffiti writer of old to have a new forum or a new medium by which to explore. And early viruses were an example of kids playing in their bedroom. Those viruses have now become much, much more sophisticated. I think hacker attacks are at an early stage. And as more and more people learn that it is possible, more and more people will want to do it.
What Symantec is trying to do is bring the security protections of the physical world into the virtual world.
I liken it to the notion that says, first you have to be smart about where you go and what you do. You do that in the physical world, and you need to do that in the digital world as well. And in the physical world, you provide tools. If you go into a bad neighborhood, a female or a male might even carry a can of mace. Well, if you go into a bad neighborhood on the internet, you might want to have a vulnerability assessment product to let you know that someone is trying to break into your network.
The analysts and investors here at ETRE were paying a lot of attention to the companies offering internet security solutions, seeing security as one of the next hot investment areas.
Well, I actually think that the whole security area is a huge economic opportunity. There are currently two leaders, in that market, RSA and VeriSign, I think are great companies to invest in, as an example. But clearly there's a lot of sorting out to do. One of the areas we're looking at is biometrics, which right now is a nascent market that's, and the solutions in that market are still very expensive. But clearly there's going to be a day where people are going to be able to authenticate themselves through fingerprints and voice recognition and other forms of biologically based recognition methods.
One innovative security solution comes from Audio Smart Card, a French company. This is a credit card with a built-in sound generator. You can program it with one of more than 1 billion tone sequences. And then you simply press a button to send a series of tones to your computer. Each series of tones is unique and tied to a PIN or personal identification number, which identifies you and then gives you access to secure information or accounts. While security is important to the companies trying to do business on the net, privacy is the primary issue for consumers surfing the net.
Privacy is something that I've seen a real rising interest in from the side of the industry. Because in the United States, for example, the internet industry knows that if they don't do something about privacy themselves, the federal government will, and the industry would rather do it themselves.
But despite the growing interest in privacy, it doesn't seem to be getting much attention from the industry.
One of the reasons I think it hasn't gotten that much attention, even though it needs to, is because the solutions just aren't there yet. Nobody really knows how we're going to protect people's privacy. I think the invasions are growing, but the solutions aren't there.
While some of us worry about websites tracking us so they can sell us their products, Dan Gilmore is worried about the opposite problem, electronic redlining.
The beauty of online marketing is, from a marketing standpoint, is you can very closely target a customer provided you learn enough information about them. And that, of course, has significant privacy consequences. And at the same time, the more they know about you, the more they might start treating you as an undesirable customer as opposed to a desirable one. So people in certain demographic groups might never know about things that would be good for them.
There's no question but that security and privacy concerns are still holding back the growth of B2C e-commerce, and perhaps with good reason. Listen to the strategy of internet conglomerate CMGI.
We collect clicks across 5,000 websites and aggregate them by user. So we have these individual interest profiles, but it's all anonymous. We don't know who the people are. We just know what they're interested in based on what they've clicked on. Now that's good for targeting ads, but it's also good for delivering content. We have a company we've started called CMG Ion for Internet Operating Network, where we're taking these profiles and we're moving them out to the edges, to the cell phones, the mobile devices, to your PCs, and if you don't have enough cache memory on those devices, to the nearby servers, just like the other content distribution networks. And using these profiles to collect content that you tend to look at on a routine basis, and advertisements as well, so that when you do get around to looking at that content, whether it's your favorite sports team or news item or whatever, it's there with an ad that's customized to you right away.
With access to the click streams on 5,000 different websites, CMGI is able to track the surfing behavior of 84 million internet users.
Privacy on the internet, I think, is one of the coming issues of the decade and maybe the century. Because one of the things that I always say is that as more and more of our activity in our lives becomes electronicized, using the internet as the transport medium, so to speak, the more there is, by definition, a record somewhere of everything we do. And that includes our personal life, our business life, our family life, our spending, our preferences, you know, and given the ability of businesses of various types to track our transit of the internet, you know, every kind of thing we look at can theoretically be known. And that holds tremendous dangers, that some people could get hold of that data and misuse it.
The privacy one is not being dealt with well. The internet community widely sees this technology as a dandy way to gather eyeballs that they can then target. And there's precious little worry about privacy.
One of the real surprises at this ETRE conference was what didn't happen here. No one was talking about Microsoft. It was almost as if Bill Gates and company weren't relevant anymore.
I think one of the most important things here is what hasn't been talked about. And the most notable one is Microsoft. And I think, you know, given that in years past that has been a dominant topic. In fact, I think for maybe 5 years in a row, I moderated panels here on the topic of Microsoft. There was so much to discuss about their overweening role in everything that people, and it was well attended. We had vehement debate, you know. Poor Bernard Vergne was forced to defend his company, but he did always a pretty good job of it, a European boss of Microsoft. But I think what Microsoft's absence from the discussion signifies is that people really feel free to innovate more than they did.
Part of the reason why fear of Microsoft seems to have abated here is the growing list of companies who are beating Microsoft in the marketplace. First there was Intuit, then Palm, and the latest example is Liberate, which just signed a deal to provide set-top box software for AT&T broadband, beating out Microsoft for that contract.
Perhaps the greatest notoriety that it got was because Microsoft had invested $5 billion in AT&T and was going to be supplying that software and then was having difficulty delivering. So I think a lot of the news value in it to people was that was the sort of geopolitical story of Liberate and Microsoft. In fact, we've been working with AT&T for a long time, and they're going to be deploying Liberate software on these interactive digital set-top boxes, and we're delighted. That's going into pilot later this year, beginning of next year, and hopefully into significant commercial rollout after that.
So he's saying Microsoft just hasn't been able to deliver good software. And it's interesting why Mitch says that Microsoft isn't delivering good software. It's because he says they are still based on the operating system operating model. They still think that everything's got to be a version of Windows, and that's hobbling them. All they can do whenever they see a new market is see a new place where Windows can go. Windows is a very complex operating system that does have its severe limitations.
The other reason Microsoft paranoia seems to be waning is the apparent combined effect of the antitrust suit and the internet.
I think you can't really say how much is Microsoft's reduced fear factor because the Justice Department and the European community have been prosecuting them and investigating them, and how much is because the internet just bypassed Windows. But the both together was a very powerful mute on Microsoft's power. And people are really happy about that in general, I think.
That's it for part one of our coverage of this year's ETRE conference. Next week, we'll look at where venture capitalists are putting their money after the dot-com bust, and we'll tell you why infrastructure is the new high-tech buzzword. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Stuart Chaffee in Prague, Czech Republic. Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by PC to PC, the online computer migration service from PC First, moving files, applications, and preferences from your old computer to your new one. Additional support is provided by Upside Events, presenting the Digital Lifestyle Revolution Conference, where people and technology intersect.
To purchase a videotape copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-310-7850. Please specify the show number and the topic.